IB Bio, Plant Biology Part 2, focuses on the transport of water, the movement of water from the roots to the leaves of a plant. The essential idea is structure and function are correlated in the xylem of plants. Here is the outline of all the available movies for plant biology, topic 9 in the IB syllabus. Use this slide to find the movie you need for review. This movie has its focus here. The xylem is the tissue in plants that moves water from the roots to the stems to the leaves. I defined transpiration in movie part 1, but I put the definition here again. Water is drawn up from the roots to the leaves of a plant. Water is a required input for photosynthesis, but as the stomata in a leaf allow carbon dioxide in, water evaporates out, and this is transpiration. Here is the first IB syllabus statement of the movie. Explain why transpiration is the inevitable consequence of gas exchange in the leaf. As the leaf exchanges gases through its open stomata, water will transpire out. To allow carbon dioxide into the leaf for photosynthesis, the stomata must be open, and with open stomata, the evaporation of water from the leaf is an inevitable consequence. In this diagram, we can see water leaving the xylem and then evaporating out of mesophyll cells to become vapor in the air spaces of the spongy mesophyll. Then the water diffuses out of the leaf through stomata. This is called transpiration. When the stomata are open, water will be lost from the leaf, but the movement of water from the roots to the leaf is critical for photosynthesis. Maybe you can see the conundrum, the difficulty. Water is scarce for terrestrial plants, and transpiration results in water loss. But stomata must be open to allow carbon dioxide in, and transpiration maintains a steady flow of water to the leaf. Carbon dioxide and water are required inputs for photosynthesis. A plant has different tissues in the same way that an animal does. The epidermis is protective. The ground tissue here and here is supportive. And the vascular tissue, seen here as bundles and here in the root, transports water or sugars. Now the xylem transports water from the roots to the leaves. The phloem transports organic compounds, sugars mostly, from the leaves to all parts of the plant. Here are diagrams as cross-sectional sketches of the tissues of leaf, stem, and root. The vascular tissue can be seen in the root and in the stem and in the leaf. The xylem transports water from the roots to the leaves. The phloem transports organic compounds, sugars, from the leaves to all living cells within the plant. Here are the next two IB syllabus statements. Explain the transport of water from the roots to the leaves. The transport of water from the roots to the leaves replaces water lost from transpiration. Plants transport water from the roots to the leaves to replace water losses from transpiration, the evaporative loss of water from the stomata of a plant. Transpiration is the inevitable consequence of gas exchange in the leaf. The vascular tissue, specifically the xylem tissue, transports water up to the leaves from the roots. The evaporation of water into the open air spaces of the spongy mesophyll serves to draw water up from the roots in a continuous column. Now listen carefully. The continuous column of water is held together by hydrogen bonds, the cohesive force in water. Hydrogen bonds, seen here and here and here, are electrostatic attractions between molecules of water, and the hydrogen bonds allow water to be cohesive. Cohesion is the attraction among like molecules. Water is attracted to itself. The cohesion among water molecules allows for the formation of a continuous column of water along the xylem vessels of a plant. The cohesion among water molecules allows for the formation of a continuous column of water along the xylem vessels being pulled by the evaporation of water into the open spaces of the spongy mesophyll. With more water vapor within the leaf and less outside of the leaf, water diffuses out of the leaf due to the diffusion gradient. This is a water potential gradient from high water potential in the leaf to low water potential outside the leaf. Water is also adhesive. Water is attracted by hydrogen bonds to substances other than itself. Cellulose plant walls are polar. Thus, water is attracted to plant cell walls. Water is adhesive with plant cell wall. So, the cohesive and adhesive nature of water allows it to form continuous columns of water along xylem vessels and then into the spongy mesophyll of the leaf. Water is cohesive with itself and adhesive to the xylem vessel walls, which are composed mostly of cellulose. Here is a micrograph of xylem vessels composed of cellulose. Water adheres to the walls of the xylem. Water adheres to the cellulose wall of the xylem vessel. The wide vessels are called elements. The narrow vessels are called tracheids, and they can be seen right here. These vessels are dead at functional maturity. They are essentially just hollow tubes of cellulose. Water is drawn up in a continuous column from the roots to the leaf by the transpirational pull, the evaporation of water out of the leaf. If you examine this diagram in the upper right closely, you can see water moving in a continuous column along the xylem vessel. You can see the cohesion holding water molecules together and adhesion holding water in contact with the xylem vessel wall. And in the lower right, you can see water diffusing out of the leaf from the xylem vessel to the spongy mesophyll through the stomata. Here are the two IB syllabus statements that I've been aiming at over the last 8 slides or more. The cohesive property of water and the structure of the xylem vessel allow the transport of water under tension. The adhesive property of water and evaporation generate tension forces in leaf cell walls. Now you should feel that you have these statements under control with the exception of the term tension. What is the meaning of the word tension, a word that's used in both of these statements? Let me take aim at the term tension, and I'll do so by starting with some basics. When water absorbs energy, typically because of light or changes in temperature, molecules evaporate. In other words, molecules move from the liquid phase to the gas phase. Sunlight and warm temperatures cause water molecules to move faster, resulting in evaporation. As the water molecules evaporate, they diffuse out of the leaf. The evaporation of water molecules within the leaf puts tension on the column of water in the xylem. The evaporation of water molecules pulls on the column of water in the xylem. The tension exerted by evaporating water near the stomata draws water up from the roots in a continuous column held together by cohesive and adhesive forces. The evaporation of water near the stomata of leaves results in a very low water potential surrounding the leaf. Water potential is a measure of the tendency of water to move from one location to another. Water moves from regions of high water potential, the roots, to regions with low water potential, the leaves. You can see in this diagram that water potential is relatively high in the soil and relatively low at the leaf. Water moves from regions of high water potential to low water potential, from soil through the plant to the air, from high water potential to low water potential. Once again, high water potential in the soil and low water potential in the leaves and in the air around the leaves. The low water potential surrounding a leaf puts tension on the column of water in the xylem. Let me say that again. The low water potential surrounding a leaf puts tension on the column of water in the xylem. Thus, water is drawn from high water potential to low potential, from roots to leaves. So here's the IB syllabus statement, and at this point you should be able to handle this statement. Explain how water is moved from roots to leaves in a plant, including the structure of xylem vessels, transpiration, tension, cohesion, and adhesion. If you compare the water potential on the inside of a leaf to the outside of a leaf, the water potential is higher inside the leaf relative to the outside. Thus, water will leave stomata. These lines of water vapor concentration present a water vapor gradient, a change in the amount of water vapor from inside to outside the leaf. Water will diffuse out of the leaf due to a concentration gradient related to water. And as the water evaporates from the cells within the leaf, it is replaced by water arriving to the leaf in the xylem. The evaporation of water from the leaf puts tension on water molecules held together by cohesion. Evaporation, transpiration, pulls the column of water in the xylem vessels. Water is held in a column by cohesion and by adhesion as the water is attracted to itself and attracted to the cellulose walls of xylem vessels. Water is moved from the roots to the leaves in this process. In this diagram, we can see the cross-section of a stem with the vascular bundles that I've shown you earlier in this movie and in part 1. The xylem vessels are here, and the phloem vessels are here. To the inside of a stem is the xylem, while to the outside of the stem is the phloem. The phloem vessels transport sugar, organic molecules, while the xylem vessels transport water, as you know. Xylem, cellulose walls are polar, attracting water. The xylem cells are not living. There is no cytoplasm to inhibit the movement of water, and the end walls of the cells are perforated, allowing water to flow relatively freely. Here's a black and white diagram of xylem. Cellulose walls are polar, attracting water. The cells are not living. There's no cytoplasm to inhibit the flow of water, and the xylem end walls are perforated, allowing water to flow easily through the xylem vessels. So can you explain how water is moved from the roots to the leaves in a plant, including the structure of xylem vessels, transpiration, tension, cohesion, and adhesion? Transpiration rates can be measured using a potometer. Attaching a stem with leaves to rubber tubing that is connected to a calibrated pipette allows us to measure the change in the water volume along the pipette. The change in the position of the air bubble is equal to the volume of water transpired. One could easily run an experiment examining the impact of temperature, humidity, wind, or light on the rate of transpiration. Once again, here is a potometer measuring the rate of transpiration. A plant stem is attached to rubber tubing, which is further attached to a calibrated pipette. The entire system must be full of water, and as water transpires from the leaves, the volume of water in the pipette will change. The change in the volume in the pipette over a set period of time is equal to the rate of transpiration. An experiment is easily conducted, examining the impact of temperature or humidity, wind, or light on the rate of transpiration. And that brings us to the next IB syllabus statement. Describe models of water transport, including the uptake of water by capillary tubes, filter paper, and porous walls. Water moves up vessels of glass, or moves up vessels composed of any polar substance due to capillary action. You should recall capillary action from when we studied the properties of water earlier in this course. Water displays adhesion in its attraction to the polar glass wall or the cellulose wall in xylem. Water displays cohesion in its attraction to itself. Cohesion and adhesion allows water to move up the vessel. The more narrow the vessel, the higher the water can climb because the mass of the water relative to the cohesive adhesive forces is less. Now, it's very important to note something here. Capillary action is not responsible for the movement of water from roots to the tops of tall trees. But capillary action, seen here, is a simple model of the forces of cohesion and adhesion, both of which are important in the moving of water in xylem vessels. Without the evaporative pull of water across the massive leaf surface area, water cannot move very high off the ground in a vessel such as this one. In these images, you can see the forces at work: cohesion, the attraction among water molecules, and adhesion, attraction between water and the xylem vessel wall. But be thoughtful and be articulate. Capillary action is not responsible for the movement of water from roots to the tops of tall trees. You must have evaporative pull across the massive leaf surface area in order to provide the tension required to draw water up from the roots to the leaves. Go back to the full explanation provided earlier in this movie to explain transpiration. In these images of water being absorbed by paper, you're looking at models of water movement in xylem vessels. You can imagine the cohesive and adhesive forces at work. But remember, capillary action is not the explanation for transpiration. Even with cut stems, water will move along xylem vessels, carrying the color with it. But capillary action is not the explanation for transpiration. Capillary action is responsible for water movement along porous walls, as can be seen here in this image of water being absorbed by cement blocks. Here is the next IB syllabus statement and our last of the movie. Explain how the abiotic factors, temperature, humidity, and wind affect the rate of transpiration in a typical terrestrial plant. An increase in temperature increases transpiration up to a certain temperature simply because heat increases molecular motion, thus increasing the rate at which water evaporates. This graph indicates that at a certain temperature, approximately 30 degrees C, transpiration no longer increases. As the stomata are all open to their fullest extent, transpiration would no longer increase. But I'd like to note that in nature, above 30 degrees C, stomata would begin to close due to water loss. Transpirations would in turn decline. Before looking at the influence of humidity and wind on the rate of transpiration, I want to remind you of the water vapor gradient that exists from the inside of the leaf to the outside. These lines represent different water vapor concentrations, more concentrated here, less here. If the gradient occurs over a short distance, the gradient is steep and the rate of transpiration is high. If the gradient occurs over a longer distance, the gradient is less steep. The rate of transpiration is less. If the humidity surrounding a leaf is low, rate of transpiration is high because the water vapor gradient is steep. If the humidity surrounding a leaf is high, the rate of transpiration is low because the water vapor gradient from inside the leaf to outside the leaf is not steep, reducing the rate of transpiration. In this image, you can see the clouds as tiny water droplets, water vapor that has condensed in the air. In addition to these clouds, you can imagine the high humidity, in other words, the high amount of water vapor that surrounds the leaves in this forest. As a result of the high humidity in this environment, transpiration rates would be low. Desert environments have very, very low humidity, thus transpiration rates are exceedingly high. Now, if the wind speed surrounding the leaf is low, then transpiration rates are low because the water vapor, as it exits the stomata, remains in place just outside the leaf. It's not blown away. So the humidity just outside the leaf is very high. Thus, rates of transpiration are low. Now, if the wind speed surrounding the leaf is high, then the humid layers of air surrounding the leaf are removed, steepening the water vapor gradient from inside to outside. Transpiration rates are high when wind speed is high. In this graph, with the rate of transpiration plotted against the length of the stomatal opening, at any size of stomatal opening, the rate of transpiration is higher when wind is flowing over the leaf. Notice how the graph makes mention of removing the boundary layer. This means removing the humid layer of air surrounding the leaf. Removing the humid layer of air surrounding a leaf would steepen the water vapor gradient, increasing transpiration. It should come as no surprise that light intensity also influences transpiration. As light intensity increases, so does transpiration, up to a point when all the stomata are open and transpiration no longer increases. Light stimulates ATP production, so the potassium ions can be actively moved into guard cells. Water follows into those guard cells by osmosis. Guard cells become turgid, stomata open. So here's a list of important environmental factors that would influence transpiration rates. Keep in mind that water does evaporate straight out of a leaf regardless of stomata, so leaf thickness and the waxy cuticle would be added aspects of the leaf that influence transpiration. And that brings us to the end of IB Bio, Plant Biology Part 2. Plant Biology Part 3 will focus on the transport of organic molecules in the phloem.